r/NuclearRevenge. First story. Bully me for 4 years. Have fun being in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. Well, hello there. This is a long one, so hold on to your butts and grab some refreshments. Before I begin with this story, I'll firstly apologize for the formatting, since I'm on mobile, and secondly, this is my first ever post and I would love to hear feedback. Also, I'm writing this when I already had 2 all-nighters back to back, so my head and thus my grammar is not in the best state. Okay, so this story happened a good 9 to 10 years ago when I was about 11. I had this horrible bully that frequently made sure that I would come home depressed or even crying. The bully was younger than me, but even worse was that he was way taller than me. He was like 1,70 while I was like 1,50. I was quite small for my age due to my parents, who were also quite short. He was tall because he had something that would make his bones grow faster. This will become very important later on in the story. The bully, who I will call TF or tall fucker, had bullied me in a variety of ways. He would frequently say things about my height and call me a disabled idiot that didn't matter. He would also say very anti-Semitic things to me. I'm Jewish, to the point he even threw a brick through one of my windows with a letter on it that said things like "fuck the Jews," and he drew a few swastikas on there for good measure, I guess. This bullying had continued through the rest of the 4 years I was in that school, which made me extremely depressed that at some points I had considered suicide. I was very dumb, and I was very young. But one day around the final week of school, he had done the worst thing ever to me. TF pushed me down a small flight of stairs, and when I was at the bottom he jumped on me. This hurt like hell, and I started crying. He then took the opportunity to kick me while I was down. Luckily, one of my friends found me on the ground and brought me to a teacher. At the time it was hard to breathe, so my friend picked me up. The teacher, who I will call BT for the bitchy teacher, you'll see why later, was shocked and then told my friend to get another teacher, specifically the one who used to be a nurse. At the end of the day, I was fine, and I was told that I had to stay after school in order to talk about what happened. I finished the rest of the day, and then I came back to BT. TF was also there. I thought I had finally the chance to expose TF. When I sat down, I immediately started telling BT what this fucked had done to me, but as soon as I told her, she called me the worst things she could have at that point of time: a liar. This broke me, and I realized she wasn't there to help me at all, so I became silent. In the end, she told us that we were both equally responsible for what happened, and that we both had to stay every day to clean up the school. This infuriated me. As soon as we walked out of that class, TF began making fun of me again, saying things like, "If you weren't so useless this would have happened, and Jews are cowards, so I knew you would tell the teacher." This was the final straw. Luckily for me, we were on the second floor of the building, which had 2 entry points, one with a collection of small stairs, and one with one long stairway. Luckily for me, he decided to go to the long stairway. Revenge planned. When we eventually came to the stairway, I waited until he was already 2 steps down. This way I could easily kick him in the back. I stood ready and decided that for this revenge I had to Sparta kick him off of those stairs. When I did, it felt incredible at first, but then I looked down all those stairs and saw that TF looked like he was in extreme pain. I laughed and decided I'll exit from the other stairway so I would look less suspicious. Luckily for me, I saw the janitor on my way out, who later told BT that I couldn't have kicked TF from the stairway because he saw me leave from the other stairway. Edit. A day after I heard that TF was injured and I was questioned if I did it, but because the janitor was a witness and they eventually thought I had nothing to do with it. Fast forward a few years and I get to hear that TF is in therapy and that he broke both his legs and his nervous system in his legs are permanently damaged mysteriously one day while he was at school. Best part is that because BT was with him last, she was old responsible and was fired and had her teaching license removed. Nowadays TF is in a wheelchair and quits his school life. Apparently, he is still trying to recover by doing a lot of therapy, but I know his family well enough that they can't pay for that forever. I do not regret a single thing. Edit. Totally forgot to mention why his bones growing was important to the story. Basically because his bones were so long it caused the bones in his leg to tear through his muscles, skin and nervous system when I pushed him and broke both his legs. Edit. Must say it was never my intention to ruin his life, it just packed out like that. Edit. Sorry I repeat the same wording over and over again like how I use. Luckily for me my English is not great, so I repeat a lot. Edit. Thank you all for the number of upvotes this got. I had no idea it would blow up like this, so thank you all so very much, and it felt great to share my story. Edit. I see a lot of people commenting that this story is fake, which understands since the story seems far-fetched. I have no idea how I can prove that it is true. All I can say at the moment is that it is true, and yes I know that makes it sound like it is even less true. Edit. Too many edits. Edit. Thank you all for the silver. I'm happy, honored and grateful that someone thought this story deserved the silver, and I hope everyone who is reading this has an amazing day, night, and life. Edit. Before I even had the chance to thank the person who first gave me a silver, there is another person who thought I deserve the silver. Thank you so very much for the silver. I honestly have no idea what to say. Probably last edit. I know some people don't like the edits, but I just had to thank you all again, especially since this post got gold. Second story. They jumped the guy while on a date and put him in the hospital for weeks. He and his friends later set the same situation up and did it to them even worse. TL. Dr. Hippie took his girl on a date to the drive-in. Rednecks dragged him from his van, beat him to the point he had to be hospitalized for weeks. He got better, showed back up with his girl, but this time a lot of his hippie friends exited the van with weapons and beat them badly. To preface, my dad told me this one and I wanted to share it here. He grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana. Just across the Red River is Bossier City, Louisiana. My grandfather worked with the father of the original guy who got jumped in this story and told him and my dad about it. It was 1970 and the guys involved were in their early 20s. Oh, and I have nothing against rednecks. People would even consider me one before calling me a hippie. They just happen to be the bad guys here. There was a popular drive-in in Bossier. There was also a group of rednecks who'd run anyone off from there they didn't want there. Hippies were a big target. Police didn't ever do anything. They weren't known for being untrustworthy at this time. Also, one cop was the father of one of these rednecks. The hippie who got jumped thought it'd be safe to take his date on a Saturday afternoon. Not long after pulling in his van, a truck parked behind him blocking them in. They dragged him out and beat him badly and told him to never come back. He ended up in the hospital with broken bones and bad bruising for several weeks. His girlfriend told their friend group, which consisted of a lot of other hippies, what had happened. When he started getting better they started talking payback. When he was out of the hospital he took his girlfriend back to the drive-in in his same van, hoping they'd show back up. They did. They parked behind him again to block him in. Walking from the truck to his van they were hollering how they told him not to come back, and since he did it was gonna be worse this time. What they didn't expect was the side door to open and more than 10 hippies that had piled in there to get out with baseball bats and metal pipes. They proceeded to beat on these rednecks, a real beating. None of them died, but they did all end up in the hospital with far worse injuries than the original guy. He learned that some of the injuries ranged from broken noses, broken ribs, severe head injuries, internal bleeding. They really got back. M. As satisfying as the revenge aspect is, I found just as satisfying that the hippies didn't get in any trouble, since the rednecks who started it and had been doing it to others too didn't get in any trouble. Also just as satisfying is the rednecks didn't ever mess with anyone at that drive-in again after that. Third story. Resist teacher gets his car burned and Kara lost. This happened to my dad in the 80s in communist Bulgaria when the government had issues with the Turkish and changed their names, didn't let them in the ruling party, didn't let them guard the borders, and didn't let them to talk Turkish. There is also that teacher who hated my dad for being Turkish. Oftenly tried to get my dad in trouble, oftenly failed. That teacher also lived far away from that school and the bus didn't go there, so he really needed his car. He was stupid enough to tell the class where he lived. Important later. A lot of my dad's classmates hated that teacher, so they gathered to break his lights with a slingshot. My dad was going home and went past them. The teacher saw them and they ran away, except my dad who was far away from them already going home. On the next day my dad was expelled for that. My granddad was angry. He had loads of rackage and came up with a plan. He went to his house and saw damn fingerprints on the car. Without even trying to blame the other kids, the teacher straight away blamed my dad. My granddad in a fit of anger made Molotov and burned his car down. The teacher didn't show up in the school again since his car burned and lost his career. The only thing I heard from my dad is that the teacher was working as a trash collector. My granddad even threatened the other teachers' cars to be burned down if they didn't take my dad back for false accusations. They took him back. My granddad was a feared person in that neighborhood. I have other stories to share about him.